Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about Kimmel-topia, the state of our Kimmel-topia, free speech, and the giant rotten tomato of canceling. Um, yes, turn the volume up a little bit. What is going on with this? What is going on over here? Sorry you got booed off stage, buddy. Um, those jokes weren't all they were cracked up to be. The the there's now that's egg on your face. No, I'm sorry. That's maybe that's that. Jimmy Kimmel. Unlike Charlie Kirk, is still alive. Um, you know. And this is not just an attack on Jimmy Kimmel, obviously. Um, well, it does seem like somebody is falling every single week, even if they're not necessarily becoming unalive. They are uh, disappearing from the airwaves. Sometimes through a bullet to the neck. This time it's through a giant show cancellation uh, from the from somebody who didn't find the jokes funny. Didn't find that opening comedic monologue very funny, and that's he gave it all the thumbs down. In the old Roman Caesar way. The thumbs down. Well, Kimmel didn't die in a coliseum, but he did lose his show indefinitely, according to ABC. Um, and yeah, so there's been a lot of I'm gonna try to just deal with just the fallout from this in this video. Um, Let me check my chat computer. I gotta be careful not to make any jokes. I gotta be careful not to make any witty retort. I cannot, I can't do any funny jabs at the head of the so-called free world. You gotta watch out. Gotta watch what you say. Um, Obviously, I use free speech there. There's the last week's video about Charlie Kirk and the political violence. What that means and um, what counts as political violence, what free speech means, and what counts as free speech, and where is there free speech? Should there free speech? All those are. It's a similar kind of. It's a similar question to the political violence um, discussion. So we'll get into that. And also, obviously, canceling. I think like a whole lot of YouTube content was basically talking about cancellations and cancel culture for like 5 years approximately. That was like half the videos. I don't know. I can't. I don't have the exact stats on that, and the internet is going to disappear soon, so we'll never get it. The Western internet, anyway. So I don't know what it looks like there, but there was a whole lot of videos about that, right? And what is cancel culture? Because it's something that like some elements of, I would say, more left leaning or right leaning people will sometimes support. Like if we talk about let's just talk about like in the case of Kimmel's show, his show has been removed from the what is it, ABC. I believe ABC is a subsidiary of Disney, right? Let me just double check that right now. So Jimmy Kimmel is now in talks with Disney execs to negotiate return of the late night show. But what happened was the Disney, right, is the giant umbrella corporation that makes bioweapons. No, I'm just kidding. That's Pfizer. No, no, I'm just kidding. The comedian's business. I gotta watch out again. You gotta watch those jokes. You gotta watch those watch those little, one-liners. I gotta not monologue too hard. I monologue for basically 2.5 hours sometimes on this stream. So Kimmel, he only monologues for 10 minutes. I gotta go for 2.5 hours. So I gotta really watch. There's a lot of ways I could get banned off of the earth from the emperor, tyrant, king of the free world, Donald Trump. So I gotta watch out what I say. The convenience businesses and legal representatives are deep discussions with Disney and ABC, trying to hammer out a compromise that would allow Jimmy Kimmel to resume 23rd season. Whether the sparring parties are close to any resolution is unknown, leaving Kimmel and his show in limbo, following offensive comments he made this week about the slaughter of Charlie Kirk. So it's that's an interesting way to put it. I listened to the monologue. I just listened to the less than 2 minute section of the monologue where Jimmy Kimmel, does his little, liberal, David Letterman standing in front of a fake city with stars, a fake New York City with fake stars, with a nice oak desk and a nice little name plaque, and he does his little, or he stands up and does his stand-up comedy routine. Right, it's very New York. It's very East Coast. It's very this is like what powers the United States Northeast is just like people standing up and saying funny things. Whether it's Toronto, New York, New Jersey, just standing up and hey y'all, that time when I was on this date and that time you're on that date and that's Seth Rogen. I mean, even on the West Coast, right? And you're just you're trying to get laid and then the president of the United States cancels your show and nobody wants to date you anymore because you don't have any money on your capitalism, and that's all people are seeking out in a selfish, individualistic culture. Isn't that funny? Right? It's really funny. Why is nobody laughing? Was that too real? I'm sorry. Lesbians, gays, and trans. That's what counts as comedy in the United States. So that's what Joe Rogan does. They stand up and just say slurs. Anyway, what I'm trying to, obviously I'm going off the topic, but so it's kind of like he, I didn't really find anything in the monologue. I'm not a fan of, full disclosure, I don't watch the Jimmy Kimmel show. I don't watch network television. I don't have a we don't have any subscriptions here. Sometimes watch shows, watching a lot of Alien Earth, which, it happens to be, I didn't realize it was actually under the Disney umbrella. They're going to own basically everything that isn't, anything that's been came out of the U.S. or the West, they're going to basically own that, to the extent that that part of the world still exists in any real way. They're going to own all the content, so it's hard to keep this stuff straight. But anyway, long story short, Jimmy Kimmel, he basically made what did he exactly say? I think I saved it here. I'm not going to go. Actually, I won't go back to it right now. But basically, what Jimmy Kimmel said was, the MAGA, he mentioned MAGA. The MAGA movement has been trying to distance themselves from the shooter, and try to pin it on the left, and where the shooter was coming more from, was one of theirs. Basically, it was what he kind of said. So that's kind of because MAGA, of course, Make America Great Again, the red hat. That symbology and that's it's not really there's not the head of the MAGA organization. It's not like the department of, there's not a department of MAGA. There's not the MAGA corporation. There's not the National MAGA Association. It's there's a lot of people who wear the Trump hat. There's some people who identify with MAGA. They it's been a thing for a decade or more. Right. It was Make America Great Again was a slogan Trump used to get himself elected. So, but there's not so what exactly does that mean? But obviously it is Make America Great Again is definitely associated with Trump. And Jimmy Kimmel says Make America Great. Because that could mean right wingers, conservatives, Republicans, right? People on the right in the U.S. in general. Sometimes MAGA can mean that. People say MAGAs and more derisive versions of Make America Great Again. When it comes from the Democrat liberal side or a left side, it's often more, not used in a positive way. Those people destroying America, making America garbage again, stuff like that. But Charlie Kirk was right. Charlie Kirk himself was definitely a right winger. And he's arguably pretty extreme right. There's people that are even more right than him in a lot of ways, more straight up fascist, Groiper types that are actually trying to push him even more right. And then there's the shooter, this Charlie Kirk shooter. What's up, Street Cat Love, Guilo, and everyone else who's coming in? Wow, there's actually more people in this stream, like the last two streams. I guess I got to do popular topics forever now. Not that doing unpopular topics is the best idea, but so I'm trying to check the chat. But yeah, anyways, yeah. So also what's up, Grant? So the Charlie Kirk shooter, Tyler, what's his name? Tyler Robinson, 22-year-old. Okay, the Charlie Kirk suspected shooter, not the shooter. Tyler Robinson. There's now an investigation that says that there is no link that is known between the alleged shooter and left-wing groups on which President Trump and his administration have pledged to crack down after the killing. Three sources familiar with the probe told NBC News. A person familiar with the federal investigation said that thus far there is no evidence connecting the suspect with any left-wing groups. So, and they also talk about banning Antifa. Like MAGA and Antifa is like a little bit similar. They're like things. Well, I mean, they're very much on the very different sides of the spectrum in the United States. But like, there's no like CEO of Antifa. There's no like the Antifa doesn't have like a payroll where like here's your X thousands of dollars here's your $30,000 this month for fighting fascism, right? Whereas like the I don't know the United States government, the FBI, employees at ABC or Rip Jimmy. I'm sorry, despite that, a good joke, but people that it's not an organization like ABC that has employees that work for it that carry out holding the camera for Jimmy Kimmel, writing the writers that write Jimmy Kimmel's monologue, right? What joke he's gonna make. I mean, maybe Jimmy Kimmel's like, writers, what did you guys do? Make jokes that don't say anything. Just like let's just make slipping on falling on the banana jokes, because we can't make jokes about the president of the United States. We can't even do that anymore, because that's the kind of free speech we live in. But long story short, there's no evidence, right? And Tyler Robinson, this person, he was from all that we know, this suspect, he was definitely on the right wing. He was like a Mormon, Utah, going to conservative. His family was extremely conservative. His family were actually took offense, including his grandmother, who said, we are definitely, absolutely not on the left. They actually were really upset that anyone accused them and anyone in their family of being on the left. And there's recordings of Tyler. The right wing was the right winger groups were trying to pin the shooting as a result of Tyler Robinson being radicalized by a woke trans person that was a friend or a girlfriend or something. But all of that is like all that they can find is basically like made up, either just completely fabricated stories, or a friend messaged Tyler one time saying, hey, what the heck? Why does this algorithm, like a facial recognition algorithm, it's like a filter that's changing my hoodie wearing portrait into a girl's head, because it's like reading the hoodie as hair, but it's like what the heck? Something's wrong with this. That's not a trans person. That's just somebody reacting to broken software. I mean, I do that all the time when I criticize OpenAI. I mean, come on. Anyway, but long story short, there's no Tyler was, this is the suspect, right? Like, Jimmy Kimmel didn't actually say anything that's really incorrect. I mean, they didn't say nice things about Donald Trump, right? But the like, if you go on Twitter right now, if you go on a lot of sites right now, what it says is that Jimmy Kimmel was taken off the air for saying non-truths about Donald Trump. ABC suspends Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely over inaccurate Charlie Kirk assassination remarks. It's not like, anyway, a lot of this is like kind of getting into weeds with it, but it's not really an inaccurate remark. I mean, because this is a question of like whether what the Trump president is, it's going to be challenged in court. It's being challenged right now. The president's actions, Disney's actions, Hulu's action, or not Hulu, Disney action, ABC as a subsidiary under Disney, the corporate entity, they're all, under financial attack, right? Disney lost $3 billion yesterday as people in stock drop. A lot of people, millions of people apparently are unsubscribing from Disney and Hulu. Like, a Hulu site broke because some people were trying to remove their subscriptions and stop giving Disney money due to Kimmel being removed, right? But anyway, so let me try to go back to one step at a time. But when I watched the Kimmel monologue, I didn't see anything that he said was factually untrue. Like, so the suspect is right wing. Like, he would be on the right wing Republican conservative side. Donald Trump is in the Republican Party in the right wing. MAGA is right wing. I mean, I don't see anybody. It'd be a really weird argument to claim that MAGA is left wing. It's not really center wing. It's right wing. It's why it's the they wear the red hat. That's part of why it's the red hat. It's because within the U.S. politics, the blue is Democrat, red is Republican. Anyway, and we're gonna make America great again. So when Jimmy Kimmel said like MAGA is trying to distance himself, MAGA is like the general white right wing forces in the United States are trying to distance themselves from the shooter. That was what Laura Loomer was doing. And other U.S. politicians who I pointed out last week, right, on the last week's video, our state of our Kimmel-topia, when they said they did jump right after the shooting happened. Like, the body wasn't even cold. The body of Charlie Kirk, rest in hell. Body of Charlie Kirk wasn't even cold when they started saying the shooter was a trans person. Just completely fabricated. I witnessed it firsthand, like live in social media. I could see like right wing tweets and then people quoting them or commenting on them, being like, "What the hell?" They're just claiming the shooter, like the left, is coming for the right wing, right? That's what they were claiming. The tranny. There's one politician said, I know it's a slur, but they said the quote unquote trannies are shooting our Republican, conservative, good Christian American people, and we have to fight. We have to go to, like, remember that whole tweet. It's like, we are ready to go to war. Even Elon Musk, everybody was getting on that. I'm ready for war, civil war. It was all about, we're going to start this war. There's I wonder if I bookmarked it. I'm gonna have a hard time finding it, but there was comments from like all these right wingers and even not right wingers, just like super rich guys that are, not in the American MAGA movement. Let me see if I can find that one. That were basically, they were basically saying, America, we're going to civil war. This is what we have to do to stop what's happening. See if I can find that one. I'm probably not gonna be able to find it. What are you doing? I could probably find the Elon one though. Okay, I'm probably not gonna be able to find it. Never mind. Everything's going too slow. But long story short, so like, but Elon Musk and many others claimed we have to fight because the left is coming for us. The left is coming for us. The Antifa is coming for MAGA. The trans people are shooting our good Christian Americans, just trying to make America great again, like Charlie Kirk. That's the angle that the right wing was taking. It's like that, like what again, I don't even know much about I don't know that much about Jimmy Kimmel himself because I never watched his show ever. Basically, I sometimes see like clips of his show sometimes, or commentary. Some of the commentary is not very good when it comes to things that he said and done. So I just want to put that out there. I'm not here to just defend Jimmy Kimmel and hope that he gets his show back. I just, as a disclaimer. But like when Kimmel in his monologue said like Charlie Kirk, MAGA is trying to distance himself from, or if we read that as the right wing of America was trying to distance themselves from the shooter by accusing the left wing of doing it. That's just what was happening. I mean, to a large extent, like that is just the truth. And then Trump, when Trump was asked to comment on it, right? The next part of the monologue was, Trump was asked about, so Donald Trump, how do you feel about the death of your friend Charlie Kirk? And Trump's like, very, very good, I think. By the way, we have this new White House ballroom. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be world class. Xi Jinping, when he comes, to visit in America, he have to if it's raining, got to be out in the rain. It's terrible. We don't look at this beautiful White House, and it like that. Trump did that multiple times. He did do that multiple times. He was on Fox News, and he was asked about the death of Charlie Kirk, and he immediately started talking about the ballroom. He's like, he didn't even. He just said, the ballroom. It's this amazing thing. It's going to be really impressive. It's going to be so great for people to hang out. I mean, so anyway, what I'm trying to point is that and then he did eventually address he said, oh yeah, I heard him. He's like dead. He's like shot, dead. He's shot. I heard he was shot, but is he dead? Oh yeah, he's dead. Oh, but Trump was definitely not really invested in or wanting to appear very invested in the death of Charlie Kirk. He seemed pretty frustrated that you're directing attention away from something that he wanted to actually talk about, right? Which was the ballroom thing. So I mean that's just factually true. Anyway, so what I'm trying to establish, I'm trying to say is that there isn't really some kind of legal slander, falsification narrative that. I feel like as this goes to court, there's not really an argument. As this goes to court, it's already going to court. There's not really an argument to be made for why Donald Trump, or there's not an argument to be made that Jimmy Kimmel made up inaccuracies about Donald Trump. Which, I mean, even if there were inaccuracies, I don't know if that, it would constitute complete removal of somebody's show, But it's not really inaccuracies. It's just that Donald Trump didn't like what Jimmy Kimmel said. He didn't like the joke because it was mean to him, and that was unacceptable, and so now his show is gone because Donald Trump threatened through Donald Trump's FCC. He threatened Disney Corporation with losing broadcast licenses, Disney Corporation and ABC, and he said you have to. And I was thinking about this. This does echo what's been happening when it comes to things like trying to get rid of some of these. When it comes to things there was recently in games, right? There was a recent rash of these Visa, MasterCard, and others that faced backlash after hundreds of adult games were removed from online stores on Steam and itch.io. Payment platforms demanded services remove NSFW content. Anyways. After the Australian group, I'm just going to call them a group, Collective Shout, triggered accusations of censorship. So, this is a little bit similar to that because there was a right-wing group. I would say they're pretty right-wing. They went after certain kinds of content on I believe it's really testing the ground to see what they can get away with in terms of just getting rid of any kind of content that anybody wants, especially in the right wing in general. So there was an attack on the Steam and itch stores through the payment processors, so like Visa and MasterCard, saying Visa and MasterCard, you have to do something about this. You can't allow these transactions to happen for games that are like we believe should not be on the store for some reason, whatever that reason exactly is. But some of its claims of sex, sexual content, sexual violence. In some cases, they're expanding to just any kind of violence. So if you take violence out of video games, I mean, that's a lot of games. I mean, Mario is Call of Duty, first-person shooters. I mean, all RPGs, all the Final Fantasies, Fortnite, Overwatch involves a lot of shooting. Mario jumping on mushrooms. I mean, so that's where it was kind of, it looked like where it was expanding towards. Because they said any kind of violence was one of the caveats that I think Visa and MasterCard were throwing out there. Anyway, this video is not about that. So my point is that, like, but by attacking the corporation, the highest financial entities, they're trying to use that as a way to, I believe it's really a testing ground to see like how far can you push the envelope with like trying to shut down certain games, television shows, in the case of Jimmy Kimmel, movies, entertainment in general, content. They call it, I don't really like the word content for reasons, but movies, entertainment, and shows and media of any kind. What can we get away with, right? I mean, obviously it's being tested by, I would say more like the far right wing of the U.S. and the collective West for sure. U.S. and Australia for sure. Britain has also been doing these kinds of things, more and more so. And so, you know, this is kind of a continuation of that process, I would say. And it is testing, it is pushing a lot of these corporations, because, you know, I'd say like the capitalists, like within the corporation themselves, right? Like ABC, Disney, Steam, Visa, MasterCard, Hulu, Netflix, even some of the bank entities, like they don't necessarily have a right wing or a particular political ideology that they are pushing, right? They have an ideology. It is right. The ideology is capitalism. We want to make as much money as we possibly can, right? I mean, ultimately, so it's driving internal, the shareholders and the stock market valuations, and people investing in hoping to make more money. The corporation as a whole hoping to show record profits, etc. Right? But then there's another force that's coming in that's saying, well, we don't. The Trump political force, which, you know, what we can say about Donald Trump himself and his ilk and those around him, as I've brought up before, he doesn't really have a loyalty. Like, he doesn't have a loyalty to the United States. I would say that he doesn't have a loyalty to the United States global liberal order. He doesn't have a loyalty to Wall Street in particular. He's from New York. He doesn't have a loyalty to New York either, because actually a lot of people in New York, especially the very powerful elite there, don't really like him that much. A lot of liberals, for sure. New York is very blue state, right? The vast majority of that state votes very democratically. Donald Trump is not running as that, right? So in the East Coast, the New York, New Hampshire, New Jersey, that whole region, and the West Coast, right? The most blue states, they don't really like him very much. And he doesn't really like them very much. He doesn't have a loyalty to the Democratic, obviously not the Democratic Party, but he doesn't really have a loyalty to the United States, like a global hegemonic imperial, neo-colonial order. He has a lot of problems, a lot of elements within that. He doesn't have a loyalty to the U.S. economy, even though he talks about he wants to make America great again and reindustrialize. If you really wanted to reindustrialize, right, you wouldn't be shredding the Department of Education, National Science Foundation, when most advanced industry requires advanced education and advanced science. And the tariff war, there's so many things that are there's a mountain of these things, right? Including like increasing the H-1B visa cost to $100,000. That's already causing massive blowback to the U.S. economy. But that does increase like companies who will need to bow down to Donald Trump and kiss the ring to maybe have a hope of having some of their employees that they need, which are from India. 70% H-1B visas are from India, at Microsoft, at the big health companies, at all, right? And so even Elon was coming after Trump for that. So Donald Trump doesn't have a loyalty to the United States. I would say he doesn't have a loyalty to the United States economy. He's really wrecking it. Obviously, there's been record job losses. The U.S. is losing record amounts of. The GDP is down. The Trump administration is consolidating record power, though. He doesn't have a loyalty to the global project. I mean, he's like really been wrecking the. I'm not a fan of what the U.S. empire does globally, but he has, through the tariff war, through these kind of direct attacks even on allies in Europe and Canada, threatening to make Canada 51st state, just trying to grab Greenland, basically demanding like gangster style rent money from like Japan, South Korea, and all the countries that have been like friendly to the United States. He's really wrecked a lot of that U.S. Like worldwide power, So, but it has, consolidated. He has made some money personally for himself. His tariffs have made. I just looked at some numbers. The Trump tariffs have made approximately $31 billion so far, or $31 billion per month at this point that are being brought in. But the tax burden is like $345 billion. And the total revenues of the United States, the total trade is dropping because of the tariffs, right? So so Trump is short-term collecting money for himself and his rich cronies that are close to him. And the closer you are, that's part of what this Kimmel event is about. You better get closer to me. You better do what I say. You better be on Team Trump. You better be part of the consolidation of power under Team Trump. Which, of course, that's like more direct mascot fascism than the U.S. is historically espoused. Let's put it that way. But he's definitely consolidating that power and saying anyone. So David Letterman, Stephen Colbert's already lost his show. Jimmy Kimmel, you lost your show. And there are people that are holding up signs. Just yesterday, part of the reason why I'm doing this is even here in Hawaii, there was all these people in front of a Walmart, on the street, like in the hot sun on the street, and there are many people holding up signs like, "Who's next? We have to stop censorship. Stop the Trump takeover." It's like Kimmel, now who's next? And this, so these people are like they're like there's. In my Discords that I'm in, a lot of people are like, I'm canceling my Disney, my Hulu, all my subscription services that are affiliated with Disney. That's it. I'm not watching any more Avengers. We'll see how long that goes for. Would have been good if you took some of those actions. When the mass unaliving of people and Palestine were asking you to do that. But hey. Better late than never, I guess. I don't know. But anyways. So, but long story short, so there's a lot of people that are definitely really, really upset and worried. I mean, and this goes just beyond like what Kimmel's politics is, obviously. Like it's I forget, was it Benjamin Franklin that said, what some founding father will leave aside their personal actions for the moment, but I may disagree with what you said, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. So now the United States will be tested on that, and we'll see who's willing to die for that. No, I don't think the U.S. is going to go into full civil war at this very moment. But there are a lot of people that are that are questioning or they're worried about this this trajectory of if you say anything that could be construed to be critical of the United States king, president, you will be removed from the airwaves. You will be removed from your speech. Your freedom of speech will be silenced. And so that's another jumping off point I think we could take, which is, has there been freedom of speech in the United States? That's a massive can of worms, I know. But obviously there has been a lot, like, I'm a native hawaiian, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, and educator and activist. So, from an indigenous perspective, from a black perspective, from a colonized perspective, the whole U.S. project has been a lot of attempts to silence the speech of black and indigenous people. I mean, like, that's like the whole and not just the speech, sometimes their lives, and definitely their ability to have their land that they're from as indigenous people, and to have any rights at all, let alone speech, right? The right to be alive is kind of more important than speech. And if you are a black trans person, a black trans indigenous person, your life expectancy is extremely low, under 35 years. So in that sense, it's kind of, what is a freedom of speech? What does it actually mean? That's a big question mark. If you speak out, on the algorithms, for sure. Like, if you're a queer person even on this platform, there's been censorship where your videos don't get seen. When I talked about Mauna Kea, I lost the people just stopped getting notified of me whenever I would go live. The entire undersea cable for the internet got throttled, basically, from this island that I'm on in Hawaii, when there was big political action from a left indigenous perspective, because we were fighting against illegal colonial projects, TMT in particular. So and obviously if you're black and if you try to stop a ongoing Holocaust, if you try to stop the ongoing biggest human rights violations right now, people are being silenced and put in jail or beaten by police for that, right? So, this idea that there was freedom of speech is always contingent upon you're free to speak, and you're free to speak within certain topics. You're free to speak with certain points of view. You can say certain words in certain arrangements, but if you step outside of that, then that freedom disappears. Right? That's why we have to say free PALESTINE if you want to get your video seen, right? So there's already, right? There's so many words. There's like a half a Webster's dictionary of words, right? Like unaliving, right? Like grape, when it means something else that is, you can't really say. There's all these words that are said, that are said because there is no freedom of speech in the U.S. and any platform and any digital means of communication, really, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't have to, right, make up words to replace the other words and have this entire lexicon of corporate capitalist, and also usually favoring right wing censorship everywhere, right? And so, because it's not like Jimmy Kimmel, because Jimmy Kimmel, he didn't have the best takes when it came to, ongoing human rights violations in the Middle East. But like Jimmy Kimmel, he didn't say anything factually wrong. And people that are saying, and then he got his show removed, he got silenced for that. And people that were, protesting and taking actions, or, just being in the street, which is part of freedom of speech, to protest against the ongoing human rights violations, they're not saying anything incorrect. They're not saying anything inaccurate, right? What's happening, this horror happening in the Levant region is happening. That's not false, right? They're being silenced because it doesn't benefit an imperial capitalist, colonialist, racist empire to have their Holocaust 2.0 be put on blast, basically. They want to keep doing it because it helps to secure resources and global control in the region of the West and Central Asia, and they don't care, right? I mean, everybody. I mean, after it's been, how long has it been? It's going to be 3 years, right? Well, it's going to be 2 years. After 2 years of this, I mean, everybody knows there's no free speech, right? Come on, let's be real. Well, I mean, let's in the minds of people who have not, who are, because like there are like Make America Great Again, and then there is the Republicans, and then there's also liberals, right? Or conservatives, and then there's liberals. There are people that have tried to take direct action. Maybe some of them will just call themselves liberals that have tried to do the right thing when it comes to these global human rights violations. But like a lot of the Democratic Party, right? Let me just get some images of this, okay? Remember, I mean, there are a lot of Jimmy Kimmel fans, right? There are a lot of Jimmy Kimmel fans that are Democrats, that are liberals, right? And a lot of them, when it came to trying to stop these horrors, they were putting their fingers in their ears. They're saying, I don't hear it, I don't see that, I'm not going to do anything about that. And because they took that stance, right, and they've been part of a capitalist imperialist project, but just with less direct mask off characteristics, maybe like less directly, maybe at least hoping to gather up the votes of racial and gender and sexual orientation, LGBTQ plus minorities, but they haven't suffered, and they also were more in power in 2023. I'm sorry, 2020, 2023. So it wasn't. So they haven't seen the level of, let's see, what can happen, right? Of somebody who is actually like on a global sense, the left, right? That's actually trying to stand up against injustice, right? And then getting beaten down by an unjust, systemic injustice, right? That a lot of the U.S. and a lot of collective West represent, and the corporate capitalist imperialist world represent, right? But now, right, when they were laughing then at, right, they were laughing then at the students at Columbia. They were laughing then at the kids in UCLA and people getting beat up for trying to take these actions, right? But now it's like, oh my gosh, now our shows are gonna start disappearing. And now they're worried, right? And I think that is part of what is happening, right? It's kind of like if you've only entered the fray, if you only got active after Jimmy Kimmel lost his show, and you haven't been taking action before that, that says something not great about where your politics is at. I would say if you're a liberal, you're like, well, that's totally fine, because who cares about some kids in the Arab country? Nobody cares. I mean, I guess. I mean, basically, that is we just don't want to seem like we're racist or misogynist around here, but I don't really care. The kids over there, kids in Africa, if it means I have air conditioned and beautiful flats and I can take a lot of vacations and have all this hundreds of thousands of dollars of discretionary spending working for giant banks, corporations, and the military, I don't care, man. I'm a New Yorker. Hey, Arab world, yoke's on you, buddy. Hey, have a tomato in your face. Africa, you got some resources. Here's a joke for you. What lasts 500 years never ends, and I'm all about it, but I pretend like but I'm not. I'll give you a hint. It starts with an N and ends with colonialism, where it starts with a C and it ends with colonialism. Oh, that's not really a joke. Well, Jimmy Kimmel wasn't that funny either. He also is a rich New Yorker. I don't really care. Oh my gosh, but I love. I voted for Barack Obama twice. Yeah, I tell you what, I voted for Barack Obama twice. I can't be racist, but I need all the African resources for cheap under the barrel of a gun and IMF loan. Anyways, so but long story short, so I know a lot of people are just like, don't know, everyone in New York is great, and I'm sorry, all the New Yorkers over there, I feel bad about that. A lot of people in New York are not like that, but there are the very wealthy ones. Some of the very wealthy ones, including the executives at ABC, obviously, and the executives at Disney. They haven't been. They're not in the business of making change, right? They're not in the business in making the world a better place, right? They're not in the business of the Disney Corporation is not in the business of making sure everyone has housing, food, clothing, and all the children starving around the world in Africa, Asia, and Latin America, and everywhere else get their material needs met, right? They're there to make money. They're there to make money. They're not necessarily there for white power specifically. They're not there to, make sure that everyone in America is a Caucasian straight man or straight woman, trad wife. But they're not there to stop it. They're not there to make that happen. They're not there to stop it. And that the power centers of capital is in New York. It's in New York. It's at least in the big major cities in the blue states, major democratic liberal states. And so that's where it's getting interesting. I mean, coming back into this topic of the free speech. So that's where it's starting to, that's where Donald Trump is rocking the balance and rocking the ship of the USS Titanic. Well, the USS aircraft carrier, right? I mean, not in a military sense, but the U.S. empire as a global, the leader of a capitalist system. Donald Trump is really rocking that boat because now, I mean, Disney is a major U.S. soft power. It is a major U.S. corporation. It's a major U.S. entertainment corporation. If Disney starts losing billions and billions of dollars, that, obviously there's other corporations around. There's Sony and there's Paramount. One thing that's happening is Larry Ellison, who was briefly the richest person in the world. He briefly surpassed Elon Musk, apparently. Larry Ellison is a longtime Donald Trump friend. Larry Ellison is a longtime Donald Trump friend, and Larry Ellison is also somebody who has been, he's backed Donald Trump both times. He also owns, I'm a native Hawaiian. He owns the entire island of Lanai, and he also, as sometimes they call him the king of Lanai over there. It's not great. He also has put, he hasn't put. His son is the CEO of Paramount, and another one of the Ellison family is also going to be taking over, I think. Let me just double check that. I heard something to do with Ellison and ABC. Yeah, Ellison loses crown as the world's richest person. Okay, I'm not sure if I'm just gonna. Yeah, and but Ellison is a good friend of Trump, and Ellison is taking over more. Ellison and his family is taking over more and more of the U.S. media. Right, I believe they're gonna Fox News at ABC, at NBC, anything that they can take over. Because remember, Donald Trump controls the FCC, right? The Federal Communications Commission, which gives you, right? They haven't really weaponized it very much. But partially because they haven't really needed to, because, not in a big way, right? Where they're actually attacking major U.S. media companies because the power has been consolidated. And again, I've a lot of criticisms of the U.S. as a whole and its corporate capitalist system. So it's not necessarily a good thing, but there hasn't been like a lot of major, like Disney, NBC, MSNBC haven't been threatened with being like completely wiped out, just like their ability to broadcast taken down, their corporations just destroyed. That hasn't happened, but now it's starting to happen, right? So Los Angeles, California, ABC's abrupt suspension of talk show host Jimmy Kimmel under pressure from the federal FCC. It's the latest demonstration of the power President Donald Trump wields. I'm trying to find the connections with Ellison. Yeah. Billionaire GOP donor Larry Ellison's Oracle is part of a consortium of investors with the inside track to take control of the U.S. operations of the video sharing platform TikTok. Ellison was in the 18 and 19, or like back in the first Trump administration. Larry Ellison was the one who would have taken. I think he did when the TikTok company, the TikTok corporation, which is based out in the United States in East Asia, when Trump cut the deal, because the U.S. argued that China was controlling Americans through TikTok, and the United States needed to control the data and the algorithm, and the data of American TikTok users needed to be headquartered in the United States. Larry Ellison, that's part of how he got suddenly a lot richer. Larry Ellison's Oracle Corporation got that contract as being as a sweetheart deal, being friends with Donald Trump, right? And that's part of what happened at that point. Let's see. Beyond the broadcast license, media mergers involve local broadcasters requiring FCC's blessing. The son of longtime Trump supporter Larry Ellison, David Ellison, helped secure regulatory approval for his company Skydance Media to buy Paramount with the promise that the CBS network would reflect the varied ideological perspectives of American viewers. So CBS network under Paramount has already been taken over by Trump's friend Ellison's, or Larry Ellison, I think that's his son, who is now the CEO of Paramount. Paramount also, Paramount with the stars around the mountain, they make movies. So get ready for conservative movies, which is to say horrible movies. Watch uncorked films on Amazon Prime, or I mean, maybe don't get Amazon Prime. Just watch some of this is the right wing filmmakers, and it's terrible, man. It's really bad. You know what it is? Because they're not in touch with their emotions. Because it's like to be in touch with your emotions and to have empathy is like not a straight man gender thing in the U.S. certainly. So this is terrible acting, terrible writing. No, because you have to be able to like get in touch with your feelings to simulate other people's feelings when you're acting, right? That's part of why there's a lot of bi and gay and queer actors, especially when it comes to guys, because it's not part of what straight cis guys are expected to do in a Western toxic culture, toxic masculine culture for sure. And long story short, but yeah, so Paramount and CBS are already under Donald Trump and the right wing, or the righter wing, I would say. And so, yeah. So free speech and So the thing is that so that consolidation is already happening. The SEC is being weaponized. More and more. It has been before, but this is like one of the biggest, highest profile direct attacks. I feel like the games one, right? I was talking about earlier. This is a test. Like, what happens if we just try to wipe out? We crush Colbert. We can wipe out Jimmy Kimmel, and then we'll have a chilling effect, right? We'll just take down anybody who wants to criticize Donald Trump or anyone, not even just Republican, not even Republican, anybody who wants to criticize Trump or anybody that Trump likes. He's really trying to become the absolute monarch. He's very like Louis XIV, the Sun King. It's very they say like our eldest child here is studying the Greeks, and there's this video about Greek history and actual democracy, which is more like an oligarchy that sometimes became a single person monarchic absolute one person rule, which is a monarchy, and then it went back to oligarchy, and then back and forth, back and forth. And so this is like somebody is attempting. Donald Trump is attempting to consolidate all the power into towards himself as much as he possibly can. And this is just another one to make sure everyone is loyal to him specifically, right? And that's really that's the gangster part of him. That's where he is different from previous American presidents like Biden, Obama, before that, even George W. Bush, Clinton, and then Bush Sr. before him. All of them were definitely, they were more team players when it came to the United States. The United States, for better or for worse, for the United States country, the United States empire, the United States global system. We call it the empire. You call it the rules-based order, whatever you want to call it. They did not rock the whole U.S. boat, or if they wanted to, they did not succeed at it, right? Like they basically followed the program. Biden definitely follows the program of what he doesn't say anything particularly far. He accidentally gaffes and he shows how Republican he actually is, how conservative he actually is when he says kind of extra racist things at random, when he forgets what year it is, especially when he was in his catastrophic meteoric decline, from getting COVID like 16 times at the end of his Biden presidency. But the actual but they never none of them tried to take over the entire United States, or try to just consolidate all the power in the United States under their individual throne, and Trump is he did try to do that. I mean, he did try to do that even in his first term. Remember, he during Black Lives Matter, shortly after George Floyd's death, Donald Trump did when there was this huge nationwide uprisings and there's 31 million people in the streets against police violence and racism and systemic injustice and etc. After the public live murder of George Floyd. Speaking of Charlie Kirk, and this is kind of a aftermath of Charlie Kirk as well. Speaking of political violence, right? Remember, a cop on live camera murdered a black man by kneeling on his neck for 8 minutes 46 seconds. That caused a massive blowback, which of the Floyd rebellion, the Black Lives Matter movement. And then Trump responded to that, right? He was getting very worried, and he actually ordered all his hundreds of thousands of rounds of ammunition, and he was preparing the United States for basically, it was a Hitlerian coup. Was what he was planning. He actually ordered the U.S. military to prepare to fire on Americans with live ammunition. And the liberals, I mean, it's kind of like, how is this relevant? I brought this up before, but I think this is relevant because it took General Petraeus and other more Democrat and liberal or non-Trump aligned U.S. military personnel to actually put out a lot of, they had to make statements and consolidate. They had to consolidate centrist or liberal democratic power, right, to keep all the American military in line, because there have been, right, at the Trump 2020 the January 6th uprising and short coup of the United States, Air Force, Marines, Navy, and Army members and U.S. government officials and FBI and other members were involved in that whole process. And they did take over the White House briefly, and the U.S. wants to downplay how serious that was. But the thing is, I mean, again, I've made many videos about the U.S. Civil War and the balkanization in the United States and the fractures in the United States that have existed and are widening. But Trump had to be stood down in the 2020 summer when he almost, he was moving towards actually taking control of the United States, and including up to and possibly starting a civil war, definitely shooting live ammunition at protesters. That would have ratcheted up the intensity of internal conflicts in the U.S. to a higher level and the chaos in the U.S. to a higher level. in January 6th, he did attempt, right? So this is not really he has been doing these things historically. So attacking, so just taking down liberal talk show hosts, right? Is kind of in line with what he has historically done. He hasn't done anything like this, but he hasn't quite done something exactly like this in a bit. But he did do this before. Interestingly enough, right? It's kind of like it's kind of like there are so many lawsuits against him. Like he's corrupt. He has to go to prison. Trump, he can't run for office again. Like, but it does beg the question. Like, if anti-Trump and liberals and Democratic Party and I don't know all the anti-Trumpers, right? If they really were serious, and if America really was about stopping corrupt politicians and wealthy corrupt interests taking power or having power in the United States, why didn't Donald Trump get locked up? How did he run again and then win? Right? I mean, I'm not saying what it is exactly, but I mean, it begs the question, like, does the United States and the powers that run the United States, do they care if political and corrupt power is in charge? But that's part of the deal, right? He ran again because, I mean, it's kind of like, I think it would set a precedent that corrupt politicians could go to jail. If corrupt politicians and corrupt businessmen, if capitalists and their corrupted politicians could go to jail for their crimes, that sets a precedent for all of Senate, Congress, and I mean, all U.S. presidents have been war criminals. And you look at all the imperial wars they've started. Not to mention all of the bribery that goes on that everybody knows about. I mean, nobody wants to talk about it, but everybody knows that virtually every single person in the United States government is taking mountains of corruption money. So if you start putting one person away, it's a chilling effect for everyone else. So the liberals are doing the same thing. Everybody, and so, but nobody wants to talk. It's kind of like PALESTINE, which we can't talk about because there's no freedom of speech. If you talk about all that and you do something about it, that's more dangerous than allowing a wannabe absolute dictator to be in charge, because it's more important to keep the system of the unjust system of capitalist, colonialist, racist, anti-indigenous, anti-black, Western power as a whole, the U.S. at the helm. That's more important than getting rid of a wannabe Hitler. The West didn't get rid of Hitler either. It was communists actually that got rid of it. That's something that people got to go pick up a history book sometime, maybe, and you got to go look that up. But it wasn't liberals that got rid of Hitler also. But even in his time, Hitler did come after sexual and gender minorities. He came after minorities, right? And a lot of liberals, the Democrats and the Jimmy Kimmels of the time, they made some jokes and then they stood down. And then he did take full charge of Germany. Like they let him have the power. Which is, I think that's what the U.S. is going to do. The liberals are going to stand down. They're going to let Trump do whatever he wants. They're going to put, like, some people are going to put up say, hey, that's not fair. You can't do that. But, like, okay, you're not going to pay for Disney Plus. You're not going to pay for Disney or Hulu this month. Like, how far, like, if Trump is willing, like, really, are you gonna not what? You're gonna do that forever? I think a lot of people are gonna get. I mean, you can't wear a mask to stop a global BSL-3 level 3 pathogen. You're not gonna show up for PLASTINE. I don't know how long you're gonna stop being entertained. I would question the level of solidarity some people have when it comes to that. But maybe they'll prove me wrong. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe America it's gonna be. Everyone's gonna rally together around Jimmy Kimmel. And it's all the injustices will be undone, and there'll be really funny jokes. We'll have like really funny jokes about Republicans, or maybe we'll just get back to having really funny jokes about Republicans in a country where a tiny handful of people in both parties basically own everything, and everyone is this rampant homelessness, economic instability, hunger, and $100,000 medical bills for easily treatable illnesses, right? I mean, we'll just go back to that. Anyway, being facetious, that's not going to happen. As you can see from the red arrow pointing downward, it's probably not what's going to happen. But maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised. Who knows? But anyway, what else do I want to say about that? So so it's important to keep in mind that the state of the free speech that people are going to be fighting for. I'm not saying people shouldn't do what they're doing. You do take whatever action you feel like you need to take. Even when it comes to like the No Kings, some people went to the No Kings actions, some people didn't. Taking action is not necessarily, a bad thing in and of itself. Some people got to take action, and then maybe they learn things during the action. Maybe they don't. Obviously, I'm taking an action by making this video. At all. And again, as I said at the start, I'm not necessarily a fan of this guy's show. But it is definitely an attack on people who are trying to, or it is definitely going to have a chilling effect. It's already having a chilling effect. It's, even if you don't have to be liberal to be like, this is worrying. In the same way that, like, you don't even have to agree with the people during the Steam and itch.io attack from Collective Shout. There were people that were more left or right wing during that, who called up Visa and MasterCard and just did everything they could. It's a mass amount of hundreds of thousands of people that basically just kept calling in and going like, why can't I buy these games? Why can't I buy these games? And some people like just intentionally trying to waste as much time of the Visa and MasterCard's tech support, which they have a limited amount of, right? Which is gonna cause problems for them when legitimate customers are calling in trying to get Visa, MasterCard tech support. So some people were doing it because they were like against the censorship. It's actually a little bit, it's pretty similar, because some people were upset that it was an attack, and it was perceived as an attack, and it was more of an attack on queer games. Some of these were not even that like necessarily. A lot of these games that they were being made were more made by LGBTQ plus people, and they were smaller, like visual novel games. And on itch it was a lot worse, because actually it's a whole ton of games just got removed. On Steam, it was a little bit more targeted, but it was still, when people saw that, even on the right wing, they just said like, you're taking games off because of content in the game. There's a whole lot of gamers that have seen this happen before. I mean, this is Robert F. Kennedy also recently came out and said the Charlie Kirk shooter, his shooting was caused by mental problems stemming from his playing violent video games. So Robert F. Kennedy, Donald Trump's health expert, Robert F. Kennedy, Robert the destroyer of public health worlds, Kennedy, Robert, I have brains in my room, F. Kennedy, came out and said video games killed Charlie Kirk. Basically, it's like, is this 1990? Is this the 1990s? There was a Kennedy in charge. And like Doom and Mortal Kombat have come out, and there was a Kennedy in public view that was decrying video games and demanding a censorship of the satanic, violent forces that are causing. This is why the kids are going bad. Columbine shooting, and the thing is, there's been mass shootings nonstop. And there hasn't actually been shown to be a correlation between people playing video games and doing mass shootings or shootings, but that's still coming back. So there's something to that, and that censorship that they've tried to, there's always been a fight over that, right? Like, okay, what amount of violence in a game or a book or a movie, is acceptable because it has some kind of artistic merit? That's usually what was fought over in the 60s when it came to books, even like The Naked Lunch. And there's all kind of other books that were argued that should be removed from libraries and corporate bookstore shelves, and were not acceptable, and they had no reason to be read by anyone, right? It's part of Fahrenheit 451, which is another science fiction novel that was written in that time. And so that's free speech and censorship discussion goes back a long time. all the way back really. Um, and but now it's it's entering the mainstream talk show television world, I would say, where it hasn't really been. I mean, like just as an example, like in the '90s, David Letterman was on, right? David Letterman was on, and he would make fun of Bill Clinton. But again, the liberals, the television networks, and U.S. entertainment tends to be almost all of it on the Democrat liberal side. Which there's some Fox News and there's some right more within the U.S. right wing political viewpoints, but it's tends to be Democratic Party. Well, it's made in L.A. and New York. It's deep blue. It's a deep blue archipelago over there, right? So this so the comedians. Well, let's take David Letterman was on, Jay Leno was on, right? Jay Leno was making jokes. David Letterman was over there like, throwing letters at the screen, making the sound of crashing glass. The Late Show was on in the noughties when George Bush was president, George W. Bush, right? Rachel Maddow was on when Donald Trump was president on MSNBC, giving 8-minute scathing liberal long lists of PhD level English literature, English language, English language expert, witty retorts and witty comebacks to everything Donald Trump was doing, right? Keith Olbermann, these talk show hosts having like scathing commentary on the right wing, on MAGA, and on Donald Trump. Like that's unfortunately that's part of why Donald Trump became president to begin with, is because mainstream networks gave him billions of dollars of free coverage, right? Whether it was positive or negative, they were giving him free color. They're giving him all the airtime he could ever want, for better or for worse. Again, but like they were on the air in 2017 and 18. They were on the air criticizing George W. Bush and his Iraq War, right? Jay Leno would get up there and you talk about, hey, we got to stop, having all these, coffins coming back. They couldn't be too extreme. Like, some people got kicked off. Jesse Ventura was removed from the U.S. airspace, from broadcasting in the noughties. Geraldo Rivera was taken down for criticizing the U.S.'s forever wars in the Bush era. So, I guess that could be considered somewhat of a precedent, although it was less direct. I don't think it was like the FCC. It wasn't the FCC directly. Let me just double check that one. It wasn't the FCC accusing. It wasn't FCC accusing someone of making up incorrect facts about a president specifically. Let's see. He's look. Geraldo Rivera says F these racists. Back in the public eye. Yeah, 2003. Let me see. During a Fox News broadcast, Rivera began to disclose upcoming operation, even going so far as to draw a map on the sand for the audience. I swear, like there was an incident where it was Jesse Ventura for sure. Maybe it was Geraldo Rivera, but it was somebody else. There's multiple people that were removed from air because of critique of or too much being directly against the Iraq War and the wars happening under U.S. imperialism in that time. And but as I recall, it wasn't as extreme as what's happening when it comes to Kimmel. Kimmel basically said something that it was a joke that wasn't nice to Donald Trump, and then he basically told the corporation, "You got to take that off, or I'm gonna cut your license." And it's not a new thing. That's not a new kind of attack Trump has done either. So this is definitely, I would say that's still I would count it as an escalation. So anyways, so yeah, so this I think one of the takeaways is that the ability to have a show. That's the other thing I wanted to say. So one way in which the free speech should not be, you can't, like the idea of free speech is kind of like freedom of information. That was espoused by open source and a lot of crypto communists, not cryptocurrency having communists, people who left economics, digital specialists, let's say, people like not necessarily Jaron Lanier himself, but like people who were on the side of information being distributed freely to as many people as possible through this technology of the internet. A lot of people who are computer programmers and technologists who worked on the internet believe that this would build a information and educational abundance, right? Even some of the people who are behind the Project Gutenberg project to digitize all or most of the world's books, right? That was part of Google's project at one point. They had this, sunny blue sky. Some would say idealistic. Some would say naive, but a kind of dream world in which information was free, and also speech, right? Anyone could say anyone. The poorest African child the poorest African child in the Congo could get on the internet and have a conversation with the richest child in New York. People in Korea could talk to people in India. Anyone from anywhere. It would level the playing field in equality of opportunity, because anyone could learn anything through this new internet, which would have through the HTTP protocol and the TCP/IP system. Nobody would be privileged in this internet. Anyone could get access to any information at any time. And there would be this global village. The information superhighway would it was kind of a digital Silk Road. It was like that became like a drug network. It was like a digital Belt and Road initiative led by the United States and the Western countries that would, it was this massive trading network of information, but that was all free. Like anyone could get any of this information that they wanted, whether you wanted to learn about math or science or the principles of quantum mechanics, or you wanted to read just Shakespeare. You didn't even need to go to a library. You could just use this internet. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say about that is the freedom of information, which include the freedom of speech and text, and the freedom to share that information, to share your website, to share your videos, to share your later on the videos. At the time, internet was not that fast, but the idea was anybody could share with anyone else their ideas, their thoughts, their knowledge, their history, their movies, their games, their TV shows, their jokes, whatever they wanted through this internet. I know that, and that would be a great for free. There's the Electronic Frontier Foundation that was established to maximize, and a lot of rock and rollers who were some of the people that were questioning a lot of the censorship, various kinds of things historically in the United States, and the metalheads that made Doom, that and Trent Reznor that did the soundtrack for the sequel to id Software's Doom Quake, who are also very much against the U.S. music industry controlling what kind of simplistic, sanitized pop songs they would have to make, and they wanted to make their own more violent, less hook-filled, more complex, and maybe not so safe for the radio, corporatized alternative music, right? So that cultural, musical, media battle that's linked up to organizations that were for freedom of speech, not necessarily the right wing freedom of speech pushes. I feel like a lot of that really started. It feels like to me in the teens, when it came to basically being able to say slurs whenever you want online. especially in gaming spaces and in online chat rooms and 4chan and Reddit. That was where there's a lot of this, you know, the freedom of speech is the freedom to basically go around and be a bigot, you know, whenever you feel like it, in any space you want. And so that's, you know, but with that has been, you know, that has been, George Carlin did something, you know, you can't say all these 7 words, right? That was one of his, George Carlin did a stand-up comedy routine in the mid 20th century. You can watch it on YouTube, I'm sure somewhere, about the 7 words you can't say on the TV now because of the censorship. And he just says them and it gets bleep, 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 bleep. Right. So anyway, and so the freedom of speech, the freedom of information coming back to because the internet is another form of communicate. I mean, the internet, like the radio waves, like, you know, taking dead pieces of tree bark, smashing them, flattening them, and scribbling bits of graphite or ink, you know, ink sigils all over them. It's called books, right? Maybe some people have heard of those. You know, they're kind of like really long and heavier, you know, 300-page ChatGPT output texts. They're called books. Anyways, did you know that actually like leisure reading is down by 40%? So happy idiocracy to you too. Happy Silver Spooky and Dystopia to you. No, but well, yes, but that's not, I'm not lying about that. But the actual information wanting to be free, and freedom of speech, I mean, these are similar kind of ideas, or they're all in line. And then obviously, it's not a bad idea for people to be able to say what they want and not to be limited from saying certain things. That's a great, in general, absolute idea to be had, right? But like my point is, like the publishing industry, like the printing presses themselves, right? Like the radio waves and the television and the silver screen, the movie theaters, right? Like video games have been, and like to an extent, some of the media, but it started to change more. The internet has been a force that has changed a lot of the power balance, I would say, for the better in many cases, for the worse in sometimes, but for the better in many cases. When it was, and this is part of the reason why I said at the beginning, I'm not necessarily a fan of, I'm literally not a fan of Jimmy Kimmel in the sense I've never watched one of his shows ever. Like sat down watched on a television screen and watched his show. To be fair, I haven't watched television like CBS, NBC. Haven't had like a regular television or cable subscription of any kind for a long time, over a decade. I don't know how long. But when there was broadcast television, right? This is where the internet comes in. You know, since the 1950s, right? Because somebody pointed out, I think it was a More Perfect Union said, a little less than a century ago, there were 50 companies that controlled all media in the United States. Today, it's 5. And like, that's true. But at the same time, even if there were a lot of media companies in the United States, I mean, there was one American Bandstand. There was the NBC. Like in the beginning, there was only like 10 channels. There were only like 10 television channels in the whole United States. When cable arrived, it expanded, and there was like 20, 30, and then there was like, you know, maybe 60, 80, 100 plus channels. But like there was Walter Cronkite, you know, there was American Bandstand, there was one David Letterman. And there's a David Letterman, okay, there's David Letterman, there was a Jay Leno, and there was like a Fox News, right? There was one there was a Johnny Carson. There's a couple networks. There's a couple major shows that everybody watched, right? When it was think about music. When it was the radio, right? Remember in the 80s and the 70s, 80s, 90s, if you turn on the radio, you heard Britney Spears. You turn on the radio, you heard Backstreet Boys. You can listen to the Backstreet Boys, or you can listen to Bone Thugs and Harmony. And then there's the Garth Brooks. And that's what you would go and you would buy. Alternative music was an attempt, like the Smashing Pumpkins, Nine Inch Nails, Deftones, Pearl Jam was like, I'm never gonna play a corporate concert. We're only gonna show up in our pajamas. Like Nirvana, right? Was like, I'm gonna play songs about all of these teenagers like amped up on tons of Coca-Cola, buying Levi's jeans, that overpriced Levi's jeans and fancy clothes, and dancing to inane, vapid pop songs after the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of history and liberal capitalist democracy ruling everything. And Kurt Cobain, showed up and was like, no, I'm not going to do that. But that was a rebellion, and so that you could buy more different CDs from Tower Record, from some alternative indie label. But that was a rebellion against the consolidation of media power in the music industry, and also in Hollywood, and also in there's a Millennials Are Killing Capitalism, shout out to that channel, series that it's called the Imperial 80s, where you have all these movies that is about the United States going around the world doing dirty wars, dirty colonial imperial capitalism around the world, and justifying it in their movies, like talk about RoboCop, Predator, talk about Platoon, Red Dawn. I mean, that's where literally, the biggest problem is in the near future. Communism is going to come in as Russia and China do a Russia does a splinter attack, a pincher attack, coming across the Aleutian Strait through Alaska and through Mexico, a Mexican, Cuban, Russian communist coalition that invades and destroys America, right? And everyone does happily ever after in communism. No, I'm just kidding. That is what Red Dawn is about. It's about the communists coming across the border. And but what I was trying to say is that like Hollywood, the means, because we're talking about Jimmy Kimmel, the Disney Corporation that owns ABC. Yes, it's one of a few handful of these big IPs. But there was, ultimately there's one Hollywood. Hollywood didn't really allow, and there was a Paramount. There was a few big companies. There's a Paramount. There's a Warner Brothers. You can look, watch 80s, watch 70s, watch 90s, watch noughties movies. There's a handful of logos you're going to see on the biggest movies that everybody watch. There's the Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Actually, shout out to Red Sonja. That's actually a pretty good movie. I think it's the company that was related to them. That I was thinking about making a video about that. Maybe I'll do that next week. But there was Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. There was the lion, right, screaming. What is their logo? Let me see if I can find it. Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. I got it right? With the lion roaring, real physical lion roaring inside of a golden ring. And golden shiny cinema film streaming out alongside it. It looks like a Trump logo. It's all gold. Trump has gilded everything he can apparently in the U.S. White House, so that's fun. Anyways, so Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer though, right? There's Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. There was Columbia Pictures. You watch Blade Runner 2049. That it's really nostalgic because you get this like cyberpunk distorted bit rotting Statue of Liberty Columbia Pictures. Remember, there's Columbia Pictures, there was Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, TriStar. There was a handful of these big companies. There was a handful of big networks, and there was a few TV stations. And you could listen to the liberal TV stations, and then there was a couple the radio stations. There was like, some right-wing pastor, some Jerry Falwell, talking about culture wars. There's the Rush Limbaughs. Alex Jones was on the radio in Texas back in the late 90s talking about the alien frog conspiracies coming to reptilian overlord your bodily fluids. But then there's like a handful. There's always been like a handful of big, widely listened to, widely watched channels. And sources of information, of text, of radio, of music, of movies, of TV show, of everything. For most of the U.S.'s history, and a lot of Western history for sure. And like that has, I don't think that hasn't really changed, right? One of the big changes, I mean, there was attempts to do that, as I said, with like alternative music being like, as a rebellion, despite all my rage, I'm still just a rat in the cage. Like, I am a dancing I am a dancing singing hamster for you, Billy Corgan and the Smashing Pumpkins, playing this music, but I'm working for this giant corporation. We're not going to have any revolution. We're not going to have any big social changes. Like, the change isn't blowing in Bob Dylan's wind anymore. I'm just, I'm a singing, dancing monkey for you, with the goth non-hair and playing the guitar. I mean, all right, let's do a lot of that stuff. Nowadays, he's gone more right-wing podcast, bro, for some reason. But, like, not just that, but the music was about, like, we have a problem of this corporate capture of all of the arts and entertainment and all of media and messaging. There's a movie, Josie and the Pussycats, about specifically that, and how the media, through music and industry, controls people and is like, hey, everybody, it's time to go fight this war that's going to unalive mass numbers of people and perpetuate horrible systems like imperialism, colonialism, and capitalism. And that was a movie that was made in the early 2000s about that power in the liberal and conservative world. It's a bipartisan thing. And so that, but one thing that did help with the free speech, one thing that did actually increase the total ability of people to hear differing opinions, I would say, is aside from just the narrow spectrum of the Overton window of what, as Noam Chomsky would say, of what is considered acceptable in the United States between the Republican and the Democratic Party, is the internet did help with that, especially when it came to obviously, anybody could make a website and they could gain a lot of traffic around the world. Back when there were things called traffic counters, you could sit there and watch your little your speedometer shoot up or slothfully rise as you had like 6 people watch my dog Sparky, .com or your GeoCities website for the Y2K core millennials out there, nostalgia. It's like the only game industry left is basically making $600 floppy disk re-releases and CD-ROMs with Linkin Park-esque soundtracks with like physical blockbuster video game boxes for people to tangibly hold on to the dead brief Western matrix everyone was inserted into in the 1990s, called that one time that where there's this great prosperity in the United States and all these millennial kids got to grow up with all the video games and Baskin Robbins ever wanted, and now it's gone. No, this is not a video about that. But anyway, long story short, the internet did allow a lot of people, and like Y2K core is a thing because it was a time when there was a lot of freedom for people to express themselves and engage with different ideas through the digital interactive digital medium that anyone could speak to. Technically, anybody could get on an IRC, get on a relay chat, get on even on a AOL Instant Messenger. We were a little bit more limited, but like you could get and talk on there and talk to anyone. Sometimes that would be bad because maybe you would talk to somebody that was a pedophile, or you talk to somebody that you didn't really want to be talking to, or was trying to scam you. The Nigerian prince is still trying to get me $2 million while enlarging my penis to 27 miles. So that's still showing up in the junk mail nowadays. It's always nostalgic to see your non-Nigerian prince is trying to scam you. Even this late in the year of our Trump 2025. No, I don't. But yeah, no, there's a lot of benefit to the internet. There are some drawbacks, but it did, coming back to Kimmel, because I'm trying to make sure that I don't get too far off the topic. When people were able to share, like, I remember in Occupy Wall Street, like, we're going to organize. I remember it went out on Twitter. I was on Twitter when there was like 15 people, like it was like the Canadian anti-market, it's basically like disgruntled Canadian Pepsi and Coca-Cola magazine ad designers working in Toronto and Vancouver, basically created Adbusters. And we're like, we're sick of making all of these cloying corporate ads, and they were gonna make it was like a bigger zine that went a little wider, and they said, and what we're gonna do, we're gonna start this thing called Occupy Wall Street, because a lot of people were having a really bad economic time. If you're a millennial, you really know this, in 08 and 09, like I do, in a deadbeat, collapsed economy, because of a global collapse of capitalism, ultimately that was barely rescued by mega bankster bailouts. But Occupy Wall Street began through social media, where people were basically getting in contact with each other and say, what are we going to do? Well, we're going to have this thing where we're just a handful of us are going to show up. It was only going to be like 20 or 30 people that were going to occupy Wall Street. And then I remember, like, more people started picking up, wait, that sounds like a good idea, right? And other people, mostly millennials, who were 24, millennials were the age that young Gen Zers were now. They were like, hey, yeah, this really sucks, but let's what are we gonna do? Let's just all like go down to this New York where all these rich people are from. Like, I get a paycheck, and like half of my paycheck goes to pay these student loans, and I can't get a job. Like, I got a degree in archaeology. I got a degree in economics. I got a degree in electrical engineering. I can't find any jobs. I can't find any jobs in any of, like, over 50% of millennials could never get jobs in the fields of their degree. So, but I'm paying out all this debt. Why am I paying so much in the student debt? Let's all go and we got no job. It's the summer, or we're all on a break. Let's go down and like occupy Wall Street. Let's show up to their front door and let's see and let them know how we feel. And then a whole bunch of people just started, like, it's like a single ice crystal forming a snowflake. The movement crystallized through the internet, through Twitter, as individuals just kept contacting, hey, friend on Twitter. Twitter was a lot smaller at the time. Twitter was like, it was like less than 100 million people, I think, on it. And it's like, hey, yeah, we're gonna meet up, and oh yeah, that sounds really cool. And then the police evolved to say, well, let's follow everybody's Twitter, and they had like shadow social media, and they could learn people learn what kettling was, when thousands and thousands and thousands of people, and then construction workers on the losing their jobs, and nurses, and like old civil rights activists, and everyone just started showing up in Zuccotti Park, and then in the country, in cities across the U.S. It just expanded and expanded, but a lot of it happened like digitally. So my point is that's just one of many ways in which the social one impact. Not to say that Occupy would never, something like that would never have happened without the internet, but it did accelerate that viral trend. And people accessing that information. There's also there's many other things. Anybody now, right, can get a platform like the one that I'm talking from now. Maybe like whether you're a black leftist communist in America, like Boots Riley, if you are unfortunately, if you are a right-wing Charlie Kirk, you can also get a platform on Twitter, on YouTube, on Instagram, all around, and so, but because more people can, maybe you won't amass, right, like 50 to 70% of America watching you, the way that 2 or 3 television networks dominated the eyes and the ears of the United States, and certainly at least the Western world. They dominated the eyes and the ears of the United States for 80 years, at least 80 years, and before that there was radio and print. Which is print has its own winner-take-all effect there in the mass one-to-many broadcast information and narrative control, and so for most of the last almost century, it's basically been a few voices you're mostly hearing. You listen to a few radio stations, right, controlled by who? Big billionaire corporate capitalists. Some of them a little more liberal. Fox a little more conservative, like MSNBC a little more liberal, CNN a little bit more in the middle, Fox a little bit more on the right. But I mean, basically that's it. You had the same voice. It's always a big corporate capitalist voice. It's not the voices of the average people. It's not. It never has been for the last century. You don't hear that voice. and they don't care to share it because it's going to say, well, we don't want a tiny minority of people, richest people owning everything, right? If you listen to that voice, that's what it would say. That's why they call it punk. It comes from the street. And cyberpunk, as I like to bring up, I always still want to think. I know it was created as a corporate capitalist marketing term for Bruce Bethke to sell his books by fusing terms that suggested this hip, new, cool information technology in the 1980s and the youth rebel culture and music culture in punk. But I mean, I still think that like, there's, that's why I make Neofeud and Neofeud 2 and Terminus Machina and all the games that I do. Because I believe that there's still something that, because I come from more left, from the end of the spectrum, and there's something that can be done in that space. But you don't hear that punk voice. You don't hear the street voice. You don't hear the average person, every person, 99% voice. Not if you're in the 20th century. And I think that's actually a lot of the difference, why there is a lot of difference in the 20-teens and the 2020s, if you look at it, to the 20th century, right? There is more cohesion in America in the 20th century. Yes, there's the civil rights movement. Yes, there's the protest against the Vietnam War. But I mean, actually, ideologically, like I would say it was more limited. Like you couldn't talk about what communism is. You couldn't talk about socialism. It was barred. It was everyone. It was a success. There was a successful capitalist, the CIA jukebox, and there's a successful capitalist control. Look up Ayn Rand, who wrote one of the preeminent global anti-communists historically, who wrote the motion picture guide for the preservation of American values for Hollywood. Speaking of liberal media companies like ABC and Disney. Where did Disney cut its teeth, right? Controlling the narratives. And not necessarily, you see, the United States didn't have to censor. It didn't have to censor communists speaking in the United States, in as a direct a way as Trump is now censoring Jimmy Kimmel, a liberal, for just, in a big, splashy, direct way, right? But what they did do was basically there was a McCarthyite witch hunt for anybody who might be, formerly have been. It's even in Oppenheimer, even scientists, but the Hollywood writers, Hollywood actors, anyone who might have been formerly have been a communist or a socialist, they're all being hunted down. There was a concerted goal to remove from the NBCs, right, from the Disneys, from the Hollywood, from the New York broadcasters of its time. There was a concerted attempt to root out and censor all speech that could have been deemed unacceptable. It's not this is actually where the liberal. It's actually where I said Jimmy Kimmel didn't say anything false. He just didn't say something that aligned with he just said something Donald Trump didn't like. Right. So the liberal said something a conservative didn't like, and communist directors in America didn't say something false. They said something that capitalist forces in the United States didn't like. The difference is that it was a little less like it's not talked about. The thing is, that actually in its time, that was a big part of the discussion of like, from the perspective of, socialists and communists or people who are just being attacked for being that in Hollywood. It was an attack on freedom of speech, but it's always retroactively discussed in the United States as, oh, well, we had to stop the enemies, right? Because any Hollywood director that want to make movies about how billionaires owning massive amounts of wealth is a terrible way, and running the world under oligarchy is a terrible way to run your country. Those were communists. Anyone, if you wanted to attack capitalism any too directly, you were deemed an enemy of the United States. And so it wasn't a freedom of speech. It was a national security threat. And everyone who lost their job in Hollywood, right, and were replaced with right-wing, liberal or conservative writers, actors, directors, producers, as Ayn Rand, the number one anti-communist, said, that was just national security. That was just defending America. It's not because America doesn't have freedom of speech. America needed to remove the enemies of the United States from brainwashing and manipulating the honest, true, good Americans. And every good American is a capitalist, and to think anything otherwise is not American and also evil, which must be defeated. It's called the Soviet Union. Anyway, so I mean, like, but you know what I'm saying? Where like actually, like, but so and a lot of those people who would have said, oh, you know, there were some people who maybe they wouldn't necessarily say that they were anti-communist. They had sympathies. Oppenheimer himself, you know, did support communist parties, particularly in Spain, as they fought fascists, and you know, did go to meetings, did go to communist and or socialist meetings, but when the censorship happened, that said you're not going to say we're all going to go along with the Red Scare, and everyone's going to fall in line. And if you don't fall in line, I mean, it's very similar to now. If you don't fall in line, you're going to lose your job. You're not going to write in Hollywood anymore. You're not going to have any movies. You'll be blacklisted, and you're not going to get any more roles. If you want to make another, you know, if you were in Day the Earth Stood Still, if you want to be another sci-fi movie in the 1950s, you know, whether you're Clark Gable, if you're Clark Gable or you're, you know, Stanley Kubrick or whoever you are, you better not say any or do anything that steps out of line and goes too far into this unacceptable speech territory, right? And many liberals fell in line. Like maybe they actually felt like capitalism is a terrible system, and I really want to criticize it, but they valued their personal career and their lives, their jobs, and you know, maybe there's threats of some people did go to prison, you know, because it was not like this was a just system. It was a capitalist oligarchy consolidating power. It was never about justice. It was about maintaining an unjust global imperialist, capitalist, colonialist system. And that's the big lie that undergirds everything in the West. But you know, we want to talk about that. That's why you can there can never really be totally actually free speech in a capitalist imperialist country or place or society, because there's a big truth. There's a big lie. And beneath it is this massive powder keg, the big truth that could destroy that entire world. You know, that's why you can't say free PALESTINE right now. If you want this video or your video to be seen, you better not say that too loud, right? Because there's a big deep lie upon which all the privilege and all this corrupt system is built upon. And if you say that truth under there, that speech must always be controlled. No, it doesn't matter if it's Democratic, Republican, absolute monarch like Trump, or oligarchy under a Biden Democratic order. You cannot touch that ground level truth. That speech can never be said. That is the joke that nobody can hear. You know, that's the killing joke that will kill that entire corrupt system. You can't drop that killing joke. No joker can drop that killing joke. You know, you got to get all the Rotten Tomatoes and popcorn from the left, right, and center of the U.S. and the West is going to be thrown at you. You can't drop that killing joke. You know, that's the one that your flotilla gets, you know, blown up. You drop that joke, you're gonna be down there, you know, run over by a isn't real bulldozer. You can't drop that truth, right? That, you know, this entire system is based upon mass control of the information economy. And a global military infrastructure for a handful of oligarchs, and the system is capitalism, etc. You can't. Well, I can say that right now, probably in this moment. But if I get in excess of 500,000 followers, like, you know what I'm saying? If you get to the point of Jimmy Kimmel, if he ever really too directly espoused left anti-capitalist politics, he would not be on the air already. Boots Riley barely got started about. That's actually, you know, he gets some pretty base things made, but he had to fight like hell to get anything made ever, and he had to have like a bunch of big stars, like Armie Hammer and what's his name, Armie Hammer and all the stars, Tessa Thompson and shit, to like throw their star power into his movies to get that made. And long story short, and he was disinvited from the Academy Awards, because the Academy Awards under the U.S. Democratic liberal led entertainment industry, as they went along with the silencing of the left in the mid 20th century, now they have someone. That's the difference between Kimmel and the McCarthy era, right? The difference between Kimmel and a communist making movies in the mid 20th century is that it was the liberal and the right consolidating capitalist power in the United States against the left by canceling them in 1960. And now it's the conservative, just the conservative right, coming for the liberal to consolidate their power, particularly under Trump, in 2025. It's not justified. Like, I mean, you know, Kimmel did it. Even if Kimmel said something that was a little bit like, that's questionable, you kind of made that up. Trump makes up stuff all the time, man. He's like, that's all he does. It's like people making up stuff like, you know, people be making up stuff in America all the time. They don't always lose their entire career in the TV shows because they, you know, made a half truth or a lie. I mean, the West would cease to exist if they couldn't just kind of fudge a bunch of truth. I mean, that's like all the history books is just a bunch of bullshit, no? Where, like, you know, just erasing the part about the 260 slave owning, you know, GNOCIDAL founding fathers. So, I mean, come on. If somebody says something, does that mean we're going to remove them from the entire airways? I mean, isn't the Americans right to basically BS their way to the top? Isn't it like fake it till you make it? That's like an entire slogan of the entire, you know, star-spangled American Eagle world. Fake it till you make it. Just like make crap up. You know, Great Gatsby. One of America's most celebrated books is about a guy who literally made up his entire life to steal someone else's. You know, if making stuff up constitutes getting a show removed, I don't know. I'm not saying that everybody should just go around lying all the time, but I'm just saying, like, that's like the true American pastime is lying. Right? You leave Europe and then you say, I'm just a white person. You just like pretend like you're somebody. I'm a great multi-mansion owning New York mogul. Yeah, that's what I am. I'm not some poor Irish bloke. No, I'm not some Italian, you know, cattle. I'm not some poor Italian farmer. I would just, you know, I'm a great baron of industry. You know, I make railroads, man. That's what I do. That's your God-given American right, is to come to, you know, bring your stolen slaves onto stolen indigenous land, people that you've killed, and make tons of money, making your entire origin story. That's why they love origin stories in America, because they don't have any origin. No, it's kidding. Okay, but you know, I tried to do some Jimmy Kimmel monologuing. Like I said, I got a monologue. Jimmy Kimmel, you only got a monologue for like 10 minutes. I got a monologue for 2 hours, man. Anyways, I don't have to. I just do it because I just do it because that's what I've been doing, and it's fun. Anyways, state of but so I actually wrap this up. Long story short, the liberal world of that broadcast medium. And the broadcast medium, I should wrap that point up about the broadcast versus the decentralized internet. The decentralized internet, right, has allowed people to have individuals communicating directly to each other without some kind of without having to listen to the voice of a large capitalist, corporate, conservative, or liberal power, like Fox News or MSNBC, like, I don't know, a Democratic-owned Hollywood studio or a Republican-owned, I guess it's Taylor Sheridan movies. I guess would I count as right-wing? I'm not sure. Or listening to Alex Jones or something like that, right? But when you're always listening to some big capitalist, mega corporate entity for the most part. That's what's most accessible. That's how it has been most accessible. With the internet, people can speak. Many people could have a Twitter account. Say if what you say is worth being heard, more democratically, people can choose to elevate that speech by liking and retweeting it so that more people hear it, right? Now, some people say, well, that's a tyranny of the masses, and so this is going to be like a mass mob mentality. And sometimes it can be not great. The same thing works with YouTube algorithm, right? If people like your YouTube video, people like and then share your YouTube video around, then it increases the likelihood that, and a lot of people comment on it too, there's a likelihood that the video will be seen goes up. Sometimes that can be games, sometimes it's bad, sometimes there's bot traffic and then there's AI slop that's messing it up. But like that has allowed for the internet and various video, music, social media platforms has allowed the ability for people to have peer-to-peer communication, right? Individual to individual, non-corporate entity, not one corporate entity to many, not one to many, but many to many communication, which is arguably more democratic, more actual free speech, and more actual, better for on a grand scale. It has many drawbacks, but it's better, I would say, for the world and human civilization in general than just having broadcast networks controlled by corporations like Disney or Paramount or Fox or whatever, or the U.S. government or imperialist or capitalist or whatever, be able to decide what everyone's going to listen to and hear tonight, right? And so in one sense, and actually like 80% of news after about the late 20 teens, the majority of news around the world has been received by people through social media, right? Through Facebook or through Instagram or through Twitter or through YouTube or somewhere else, right? Or just people sharing things to each other on Discord or wherever. The number one place where people, like empirically, people have been getting their news more from. Now, of course, okay, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. These are corporations own these platforms, yes, and they can rig the algorithm. That's part of one of the complicating factors in this, right? Corporations owning the stacks and the major platforms and the ecosystems within which people have to swim and navigate. Poisoning the well, poisoning the water, if you will. When Mark Zuckerberg privileges certain kind of right-wing content to the top of the Facebook algorithm, that's a problem. But definitely more so than there's a possibility that people can get more news and information from other people, and sometimes if people really want something kind of information to be heard, that information gets shared, right? Like I've seen this happen with Hawaii stuff. Like millions of people suddenly were watching my, Hawaii thread about, the U.S. banned Hawaiian language or culture, stole our land, and imprisoned our leader, forcibly made us a colony, installed a capitalist system. We had the world's first universal healthcare system, world's highest literacy rate, nationalized, socialized, non-capitalist electrical grid powered by water spun turbines, and we're also Native Hawaiians are overrepresented in prison, overrepresented. We are undereducated, and we are represented in so many ways. Many of us are forced out of our land. Our land is being continually stolen and continually converted into, billionaire and military-run for-profit operations against our will, et cetera, et cetera. So my information I was sharing on Twitter and other places like that, but Twitter is one of the biggest ones. Suddenly, millions of people, several times for a couple of years, there would be 100,000 likes on a post, and I didn't feel like I put the most effort into that, necessarily, but people felt like that was important for that information to be heard, right? Because certain number. It's not because Elon Musk, the XAI, was like, oh yes, what we need is more Hawaiians fighting the capitalist and colonial system. That's going to really help out Grok. It's going to really help out the giant, the shareholders of X. They're really going to benefit from that. Elon Musk really just cares about Black and brown and indigenous people so much. We know he doesn't, right? That's why he made Himeka Hitler out of Grok. And he's talking about how the biggest problem in South Africa was attacks on white people, and so we know it's not because the corporation. What I'm trying to say is it's not because the corporation of Twitter, the CEO at the top, the billionaire Elon Musk, or even the AI that he's programmed to manipulate things, Grok or the XAI or whatever. None of that is why. This is my personal anecdotal experience. Other people, there's other versions of this, many instances of this as well. But it's because people that were following me, Native people around the world, Black people around the world, in Africa, South Americans in Brazil or in Bolivia, upset about the United States imperialism and stealing all of their resources and sick of the colonialism down there. They're now in the BRICS. Those people, our friend Luna Oy in Vietnam, the Vietnamese having to resist the colonialism for a long time, going, oh yeah, that's a story that's happened to us. All these people around the world were like hearing stuff that I was putting out or seeing the information I put out. They're saying this needs to be heard by more, and also people in the United States are just on the left. They're like, we have to support indigenous people against this ongoing crimes. All these ongoing crimes in Hawaii. This is terrible. I haven't heard this. I don't see many people talking about these particular things. This needs to be heard, and they're just sharing it because they feel like, because individuals. My point is not specifically to make a point about the problems of colonialism in Hawaii, free Hawaii from U.S. imperialism, etc. But like, although of course, the UN has said that it's a ongoing illegal annexation and fraudulent annexation and illegal military occupation. But my point is that like, if there was no internet, right? Like in 1990, there were people that were very upset about all of these problems in Hawaii. In 1960, there were many people that were very upset. Many Hawaiians and other people that are upset. Kurt Vonnegut was upset about this. I just read multiple books. He's actually mentioned this in Breakfast of Champions. He specifically mentions the problems regarding U.S. imperialism in Hawaii. And the solution is he makes a joke, like millions of Hawaiians just, the million Hawaiians could just like tie themselves to balloons and float up into the air, and then it won't piss off all the billionaire capitalists that want to own all the private property there. So this is not like it's a mystery. But like, you would never hear this in network television. Like, I could never get 1 million people to listen to me because all you could hear is Walter Cronkite, or you could hear again the one-to-many medium of TV and radio, where one central network headquartered in New York or LA decides what is going to be said, what is the script is going to be written. They have final edit. The Ayn Rand programmed writers and editors of anti-communism and consolidation of power are going to decide what's going to go into the Hollywood script, what's going to go into that TV show, what's going to be said in the opening monologue of Johnny Carson, Jimmy Kimmel, whatever the Fox News anchor is going to say is coming through a teleprompter that's decided by the capitalist corporate numbers, right? And so when I shared that, it's because many millions of individuals around the planet Earth decided that information was important for people to hear, and so they shared it sometimes people share because fascists will share. I'm going to share it because I want people to see this racist meme, and that's not good too. But it is more democratic. I mean, you could say, well, if many people have really bad ideologies, then it's but I mean that is a problem of ultimately of democracy. But you have to have faith that humanity as a whole has its positive signs. The positive sides of humanity will shine past the blemishes and the marred problematic parts of it. You know what I mean? And if you're on the left, you have to kind of believe that. Otherwise, you might as well just go make a lot of money on Wall Street. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, so in that instance, it was because many people could say, I want to reshare this, I want to like this, I want to get people to see this message, right? It's only because people around the world are like, these human rights atrocities in the Middle East have to be seen, right? Nobody is paying the left to go out and stop racism. Nobody is paying the left to go out and try to fight against corporate malfeasance and this corrupt, like destructive capitalist system, right? Nobody's paying you to do that. You're the opposite of the capitalist. You don't got no money. It's because you, democratic as a people, you and your other people believe that's what's the right thing to do. That's part of why capitalism is a system that's anti-human in many ways, because it's like those who have all the money, who have the least moral conscience, which is what they've built their mass extraction of the labor value into their pockets and their bank vaults. They can use that against the masses of people by $1, one vote instead of one person, one vote. I mean, not just in the voting booth. I'm talking about just in every aspect of life. $1, one view, like $1, 10 views on YouTube. $1, 10 tweets. That's where it can be corrupted, right? Or $1, $1 billion, one TV station, 1 million ears, or 300 million ears and eyes, right? $10 billion, you can for $100 billion, you can get your own Disney media empire and control everyone's mind, right? And make sure that they don't violate what you want to happen in your settler colony in West Asia. By silencing all actors, by silencing all directors, by editing out anything that, and and getting rid of anybody saying whatever you want. Now the difference is now conservatives are coming for the liberals, and they're even coming for Disney right now. Where a lot of times it's liberals usually have been for a while. They more have been leading that media control. There's always been censorship, but it's changing direction, and so the internet is, as I point out, is like it has a lot more actual freedom of. It could be, one of the points is not about free speech. Like the word "free" is it's a weird word, there's no free speech. Like, speech is always controlled in some way or another, And I made a point about this when it came to I think when I was talking about DeepSeek, or I can't remember where it was. Xia Hongshu and Red Note, right? In any space, right? People are free to open or close their mouth, right? And make sounds come out. I mean, technically, in a physical way, right? Everybody's always free to do that, unless you're like dead or your vocal cords are cut, right? But like, nobody is free to make everyone else listen to their words and hear them at all times. You know what I mean? Like if somebody comes into your house and starts saying like, I don't like your cooking, I think you should, be vegan, or you should be a carnivore, or, I think you should vote Republican, or, what, I think that you should this, or I think you should that. If somebody came into your house and started like arguing with you and just talking at you about what you should do, you have the right to kick their butt out. And if they don't want to go, things could escalate, and they would be in the wrong too, legally, but also like, just in general, that's just like a reasonable civilization. That's not how they operate. Like Jimmy Kimmel had the ability to speak to multiple millions of people, right? But like, he did not have like the inalienable, like Jimmy Kimmel did not have the inalienable right to be heard by 50 million people every night, or 20 million, or whatever his viewership was. You know what I mean? Jimmy Kimmel had the access to multiple millions of people around the world every night, because Jimmy Kimmel was at the top of a power structure, an economic, a political, and a power structure that he ascended over time, that and the economic power that afforded him access to millions of people's eyes and ears, right? So speech is actually expensive, right? To get 50 million people to hear your monologue, it costs millions or billions of dollars. It costs the corporation, it costs the news network, and everyone to get you up there, to be heard through a corporate broadcast network. It's really expensive, and nobody can just. I'm gonna be heard by 20 million, right? If you if you don't like, just even on a mainstream celebrity, Donald Trump has 100 million followers. Nobody, even before he was president, he had millions of followers, right? Nobody is just free to have millions of followers, right? Elon Musk can be heard by hundreds of millions of people just by forcing his tweets down everybody's eye holes and phone screens, because he controls Twitter, right? Many people were pissed off. Why am I unfollowed and I blocked Elon, and I've been forcibly unblocked and forced to follow him? Well, that is what $44 billion buys you. Do you want 300, 400, 500 million people to be forced to see your speech? 44 billion. Hey, all you got to do is find $44 billion and buy Twitter. Maybe it's worth less now because he screwed it up, right? But you know what I'm saying? Speech, and I mean, obviously that's not a great system, but what I'm saying is that like, they're like the economic and power differentials have always limited whose speech gets privileged and gets to be heard by whom. Anybody can speak and say things. Now, if you come through the street and you say, everybody of this racial group should be unalived, people are also free to come and punch you in the face. That's what happened to Richard Spencer, right? Or people are not free to punch you in the face, but you might get punched in the face because, right? You have the freedom to say things, but if you say things that are extremely hateful and bigoted, people may take action and respond to that. You're not free from the repercussions of the speech that you have shared. You know what I'm saying? So, and that's where it gets complicated. Well, I mean, if somebody is going around and just like saying, fascist things and the things calling for, extreme hateful supremacist things, well, obviously they shouldn't be able to say, and it's true. Like if you tolerate intolerance, then the society will become, the tolerance will be destroyed. So, but even there, because the people will say, well, but beyond that, we have to have total freedom of speech, and everyone can say whatever they want. But but a lot of that line, like whether fascist is like that is all being questioned, right now. The MAGA and Trump does question that. Like, I mean, why should we, no, we should have freedom of speech, and that means saying absolutely anything. And and the thing is, and and we're right, because I mean the left is just, tolerance itself is wrong, right? So there's not really a way to rationally, logically, empirically argue your way out. That's why to stop fascism, it has required things beyond simply, as I talked about last week, political. It was something beyond votes, elections, arguments, legal lawsuits, lawyering, protests. It took a lot when the fascism in World War II. It took a lot of political violence to stop the Nazis and the Japanese imperialists and the Mussolini and the fascists, the global fascists. Right, mostly coming from communists. Not most of it was not fought by Western, not by Jimmy Kimmel liberals. It was they actually chickened out, and a lot of them actually became fascists when it came to rubber hits the road. They were silent. That's why there's a whole thing. If you're silent in the face of injustice, you choose a side of the injustice, which is the side that the liberals chose. And that's why Oppenheimer gave money to communists. He didn't give it to liberals. Oppenheimer was behind the invention of the atom bomb. He didn't donate money to the Liberal Party of Spain. You didn't donate it to, he donated it to the other side because he knew which side was going to fight the fascists. Because at a certain point, because fascism is not, ultimately, it's not something that can be won by lawsuits. Right? This is where the U.S. is going now. The U.S. is going to be suing, and there's going to be suing, and at a certain point, if the fascism gets strong enough, the law is irrelevant. Like Goebbels walked around with a gun, and he said, "I will shoot anyone who wants." If you want to debate culture and what makes a German, if you want to talk about what German culture is, I will just shoot you. And then you could lawyer up against that, but it's like, well, if we build big enough, if we consolidate enough power in our fascist side, it doesn't matter how many lawyers you have. It doesn't matter how good your argument is. It doesn't matter how well you could have a 10-hour video essay about why fascism is wrong and anti-fascism. I don't care. Nobody's gonna watch it. Bang, right? And that's where the communists stepped in. Because they said, well, you're wrong, and now you're not around. And so I'm not saying that's where America just has to have some kind of civil war right now, but what I'm trying to say is that like this idea that like the free speech, they're talking about speech that there is freedom of speech. My point is that speech, as I made the point earlier this year, let me see if I can find that one real fast. As I made the point earlier this year, that speech is always controlled, right? Speech is always controlled. Speech is never. Nobody is ever free, except in a weird, childish, naive way. Everyone is free to have discussion, and this will result in the perfect. As long as people are able to say what they want to say on the street or in a print, this will result in a perfect society as everyone becomes educated over time and they all see the truth. That's not how speech actually functions in the world. There's no absolute where is that one? The Red Note one? Okay. TikTok, no. Yeah, maybe it was this one. Okay. I think it might have been this one. It was the TikTok TQ. But like, because when TikTok was talking about being banned, right? But in this video, I think I talk about how the U.S. Exited from the U.S. controlled algorithm. And TikTok is only becoming more and more controlled into Red Note, and they learned a lot of new things because it's not. There's a communist party that actually controls that algorithm, and it says they have a different ideology, and that and so the ideas and the things that people were discovering and the perspectives people were discovering were like completely new, particularly when it came to people discovering new things. Oh my God, I didn't realize China was like that. Wow, they actually live a lot better lives and they actually don't hate us as much as we were meant to. We're programmed by our military industrial complex and imperialists to believe. Wow, right? So people discovered new things through that process. And you can say all kind of things and you can say anything. You don't have to censor your speech on the Chinese social media, like PLESTINE. You don't have to say things. You can post all kinds of things. You don't even realize how deeply censored you are until you exit the entire Western world to realize, wow, actually everything is always being controlled. And no, there's things you can say on the other platform, on a Red Note, but those limits are, and the limit you could say that's not fair is if you say certain things about. If you say inaccuracies about Taiwan, about Hong Kong, and about their party, then those could be grounds for having those posts taken down, right? And those are things that they feel that they need to do in order to, the same way that people say, well, we need to not have fascist speech being spread, or the right wing was saying we need to not have trans speech being spread. We have to get rid of. Trans people shouldn't exist. That's the whole part of it, right? But not just that. Trans people shouldn't have their games. Trans people, these radical black groups, Black Lives Matter, this anti-white groups in the black and indigenous. These voices shouldn't be heard, right? And the liberals, they're destroying America. They shouldn't be heard. Those voices need to be censored, right? That's what Donald Trump is doing, right? So my point is that there is always control of some kind of speech depending on the context and the platform and the space in which you're speaking. Who controls that space? Like if it's your house, if somebody comes in your house, right? And you can, we'll have freedom of speech in my house. If you're a black person and someone comes in your house and they just start screaming N-words at you, you're like, well, I don't tolerate racist bigotry in my house. I mean, because some people do. Like a lot of conservatives and some liberals, they will tolerate. Yeah, you can make racial epithets. You can say slurs in my house. That's fine. You can say that. Like there's platforms on the internet. They're like, yeah, you can say R slur, say N-word wherever you want, however you want. Like, and they're like, that's why come to our platform. Come to, what was it? Gab. Come to, other platforms. You can say whatever you want. We tolerate that, right? So, how much hatred or bigotry you're going to tolerate? That's a decision people are going to make. What counts as hatred and bigotry, right? That's a decision that the power, and there is a power. It doesn't matter how arbitrary they want it. Liberals' goal is to pretend that we're like some kind of universal, non-existent. This is just how things are. We're just the purest science and rationality. There's always a power structure. Even it could be a more democratic power structure. It could be a more egalitarian power structure. It could be a less fascist. It could be an anti-fascist. It could be a more anti-racist power structure, but there is always a power structure, and there's always a moderation. There's always moderation in any space. In a bar, right? Let's say if a Nazi sits down with a swastika at a table in a bar, and there's 9 people sitting down at that table. Now there's 10 Nazis sitting there. If people don't all get up and leave, there's 10 Nazis sitting there, and now that bar becomes a place that allows Nazis in it, right? And so that's where and so each bar has to choose, will you allow that to be in that bar? Because over time, right, people are not going to want to come to the bar. Many people that are anti-Nazi are not going to want to come there, and you're going to be the Nazi bar, right? And so and so anyway, so that's the naive liberal perspective, is that everywhere is just we're all colorblind and we all are one big happy family. I'm not saying people shouldn't care and love each other, but to pretend like that spaces don't have rules and don't have control over certain types of speech and certain types of activity and behavior anywhere that's one of the things the left will say, is that we want the dictatorship of proletariat, not the dictatorship of capital. Right, in countries. Now, some left will just don't like that, particularly anarchists, etc. But in any space, I mean, even if you're an anti-fascist anarchist, right, you can't be for all free speech, right? You'd be like, I'm not going to tolerate fascists that want me dead in my space. Right? It's actually right there, right? Because if you do tolerate armed fascists in your space, you might cease to exist. It's literally an existential threat, right? If you're like a queer trans person, you're surrounded by homophobic, fascist, anti-trans people that are posting these memes and like in your space, like threatening you with guns, and police that won't investigate that kind of thing. Like, it is an existential threat for you to not allow that speech to continue, and definitely don't allow it to continue in your space. If you are a black person, and there are people talking about, like, you know, even the founding fathers knew this, as problematic as they were. You know, two wolves and a sheep discussing what to eat for dinner is democracy. What is it? I forget what it is. Liberty is the sheep with the gun contesting the vote. You know, and so anyway, and so you know, and so my point is that, like, so there's always a limit to any kind of in any space, in any platform, on any network, right? Whether that's NBC or Fox News, there is a limit. There is moderation. There's always moderation, right? Boots Riley will never be a news anchor. You know, Boots Riley will never be able to give nightly comedy routines. He's very funny. I love his jokes in Sorry to Bother You. A black overt communist will never be allowed to be a mainstream, majority of America watched and heard voice, ever. Because anti-blackness and racism and capitalism are what the U.S. is based upon. So it's not going to happen. I mean, barring massive system change. You know what I'm saying? The liberals try to not show that that's censorship, but that's always going to be censorship. They're not going to show when executives and editors, they will quietly come and talk to you. Even universities have censorship. Hey, you know, if you espouse too many of those kind of views, you're not gonna accelerate your career and get tenure. I mean, even if that's an option nowadays, but you might not have a job at this university. They don't censor you in university in a liberal academia. They don't censor. They just don't ask you back. You don't get hired next year. It's just very quiet, very discreet, so that the society can, because the liberals, because they want the society in general. Sometimes they've drunk their own Kool-Aid to believe that there's no censorship, but there is always, even the enlightened ivory tower of academia, where we can talk and discuss anything. No, there are limits, and you'll know this when you don't get hired back next year for your next year's curriculum, your next year's college professor, online or in-person school. You'll know this. You might not know what exactly. You can guess. They're not going to tell you. You're just not going to get hired back. The censorship is as quiet and as discreet as possible to convince people that they live in a place where there is no censorship. It's actually how it mostly works. That's how when a racist, capitalist, imperialist, authoritarian regime is really in power, people don't even realize the censorship is there, right? The fact that Trump is overtly now acting in this massive, splashy, this is like the loudest censorship possible. Like, it is the most, I am censoring you. It's almost like it because Trump wants it that way. The conservatives want it that way. Like, I believe this. Like, conservatives don't like liberals, because liberals like, oh, let's pretend like we don't believe that. Like, let's be racist but pretend like we're not. Moderate white liberals. Ask Martin Luther King what he thought about that, right? That's why they're dangerous. But the conservatives are like, I don't like black people, period. And they deserve to be in separate schools. And in fact, they deserve to be slaves, right? Like Charlie Kirk, right? So Donald Trump is like, he's doing the censorship. The liberals are like, okay, yeah, next year you're not coming back. Okay? So sorry. Don't tell anyone we're racist. Don't tell anyone we don't care about the kids in the Middle East. Just you're not coming back, okay? And Donald Trump is like, Jimmy Kimmel, you are censored. You're like, you're fired. But now, it's like, literally, you're fired. You're censored. It's like as loud as possible. So which is great for destroying the U.S. empire, because it's not, you rip the mask all the way off. So, but it's the effect is the same as a million people not getting hired back because of their stances on, any global colonial, imperial, genocidal, capitalist system. In terms of the actual censorship. Okay. Anyway, I feel like I got to wrap this up. I just keep spiraling around. have a good time. Jimmy Kimmel, rip your show. Sorry you got a 1% of Rotten Tomatoes. The giant Rotten Tomato. The giant rotten orange tomato, that's Trump. We gotta have some Trump jokes. I gotta watch out how if I make too many Trump jokes, it's gonna be I'm gonna disappear from the earth though. So I gotta watch out. Giant rotten tomato got canceled your butt. So have a good I can't. You had a lot of bad. You had a lot of bad stances. So some of this is kind of like So some of this is the Rotten Tomatoes coming home to make that ketchup. You know what I'm saying? All of your bad jokes when it came to people suffering around the world and your lack of action and a lot of chances, now that the rotten egg, is on your face, in that sense, but also rip your show. And so be like, you're gonna boycott Disney, Hulu, ABC, all that stuff. People, you do what you do, vote with your dollar, your conscience. If you want to unsubscribe from Disney Plus, we don't actually pay for any of the services. So, what's going to happen when it comes to that? I don't know. But what I think is that it's going to be interesting. Do mutual aid, support indigenous black people of color, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, restore anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist struggles everywhere, especially in your place. Build mutual aid networks as best as you can, and we will have to hopefully expand mutual aid speech platforms as well. And it's also one benefit to just being some random person, right? It's like, they can't really take away my network. You'd have to shut down YouTube, right? I mean, and also having a lot of individual people with like 1 million, like 10 million people reaching, 1,000 people in an audience, right? In their audiences, overlapping audiences, is better than one person reaching 30, like one Jimmy Kimmel reaching 30 million people. Just in general, because one person reaching 30 million people, with one flip of a switch, you can get rid of him. But you can't get rid of the idea. That's actually a line in Neofeud too. It's like you can't get rid. You can't get rid of a ghost in the machine. The red ghost in the blue blood machine. That's Silver Spook, the character in Neofeud 2, says the line. I'm the red ghost in the blue blood machine. You can't get rid of the specter, the red specter in your white army's CIA machine. So so it's kind of like lots of people distributed, right? Can all be removed because you have to basically delete every YouTube channel at a certain point, and that would collapse. You wouldn't have any. It's just not really feasible. So it's better to have a lot more voices saying similar things, not even the same thing, than having just one person saying one thing. And anyways, so that's another thing through the internet that we have that we can combat this ongoing, I would say, unjust regulation of speech, unjust moderation of speech. There's always moderation, and there's always some kind of censorship. The question is, who is being censored and moderated and removed for what reason? And we have to just build more spaces where fascist and really bad kind of ideas and language and speech is being moderated, as Holly's job is to do in my streams, to moderate. Really, if you come in and say something really horrible and terrible, you can get your butt kicked out, because that's the space, that's the rules of our space. Anyways, thank you so much for watching this stream. If you'd like to support us here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, an anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-racist, Native Hawaiian-led cooperative here on the U.S. occupied Hawaii, you can give us direct support through ko-fi.com/silverspook. You can also help us out at patreon.com/neofeud, where you can give us ongoing support for the education. Holy crap, it's almost 2. I went on too late. Sorry. On patreon.com/neofeud, you can give us ongoing support and get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on, including Neofeud 2, which is a retro cyberpunk adventure game, future projects that we're working on. I also do art for novels like this one, and doing land back and restorative ecological justice here in Hawaii. And of course, you can also grab Neofeud on Steam. Hey, what's up, Strin? Also in Comrade Internet. Sorry, just looking at the chat. Oop, come on. You can also grab Neofeud, which is a retro 1990s cyberpunk themed adventure game. Sorry, it's taking a while to load for some reason. And you can also get, Neofeud is a retro cyberpunk adventure game. If you like this game, you can also leave even a very short review and help us get this game discovered in the Steam algorithm, and it really helps a lot. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and Mac and Linux. Over here. Thanks to whoever got the Neofeud short story collection as well. You can also get other games like Decolonators, Indigenous Star, Pigeon with Gun, and Woman, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing conservative culture, critiquing that culture from the perspective of Mary in the Bible. I'm also going to be looking for Neofeud 2 testers soon. So anyone who wants to test out Neofeud 2, contact me somewhere on a Discord or somewhere. Because I'm not at this very moment, but very soon I'm going to need testers for that. So just like run the game. The game is going to be kind of big, so I want to test to see how that is going to work on people's computers. Neofeud 2 is like over twice the size of Neofeud 1 because it's bigger, it's longer, it's got more graphics in it, and so I want to test that out sooner than later. So yeah, let me know. Also, you can follow at SilverSpoonGames at wandering.shop and/or at SilverSpoonGames at mastodon.social on Mastodon. You can also follow on Twitter, on Instagram, on Blue Sky, and all over the place. You can also you can follow on SilverSpoon Guy, SilverSpoon Games minus the E and Silver for the games related stuff. And you can also follow Holly at Allergic to Blue, a moderator here, apparently with myself. Sharing always important information like this. And Holly is, of course, moderator here. And thanks to all our Patreon patrons for your ongoing support. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this work, so thank you so much for that. I'll try. I might skip some of my nap. Possibly, we'll see how that goes. I'm starting so late. I know it's like I'm starting real late, so I might just like eat and then come back to Twitch. I saw Strain was already here. I'm like, I'm missing Strain around in the stream, so I'm like, I'm starting at like 10 o'clock Eastern time. Anyway, long story short, have a good one. Hey, watch out. Watch out. Watch out for Agent Orange. He's gonna. There's not really a good joke in that. That's a bad place to go. Keep your mirror shades polished. Don't get censored, and be excellent to each other. And we'll see you next time on the